Okay, this is Tim Maloney again here with Paula Bailey from Reading, England, a computer science secondary school teacher there. And we're going to be talking about, this is what we informally call the Mindy section, but we're going to feed into it by reflecting on a strange set of curricula that I had in high school. This would be Alter High School, as these are the Alter High School recordings, right? We had a section that was at least 2 months long, maybe an entire semester. It was about marriage and the family. This was senior year religion class. And, entire semester about something that wasn't going to apply to most of us for some years to come. In my case, it would not have applied for at least 10 years until I had a decent job that could support marriage and a family and live up to all those expectations of being responsible about my behavior that was expected of us. So it all seemed hilarious at the time, and it only got more hilarious as we matured and got older. To be fair, there were a few folks who got married just out of high school, and this material would have been fresh in their minds. And, I would see some of them when I go to church with my parents. There they were with their spouse and maybe a new baby and only a few years out of high school, but it just didn't apply to me. And it applies even less these days when kids have to go to school, do their internships, and, keep taking sort of educational lessons and jobs until they're in their late 20s, and they finally might get a job that has benefits. Okay. And they can think about marriage and the family, long after they've finished their lessons in high school, which probably have changed in the last 55 years also. I graduated from high school in 1967, folks, and here it is, 2022. I'm 73 years old and trying not to look it. And Zoom actually helps with that, but don't tell anyone. So that's the background. I mean, I was so disinclined to think about such things that I didn't even want to go to my high school prom. And this was my parents viewed this with some distress, although they got used to it. But what I do recommend is that if there's something you feel strongly about and it expresses an earnest, well thought out viewpoint on your part, and and it reflects a little bit of who you are and how you're taking charge of your life as a teenager, and you tell your parents that and it leaves them speechless, you're probably onto something. And so if the subject is a high school prom and you say, in effect, I don't want to go and you can't make me. Okay, now I didn't say it in quite those words, but I wish I had. Okay, it was about that. I was just about that resolute about it, and that leads into the lingering thoughts about that. Is that, well, what are the conditions for which I might have been convinced to go to the prom? And I finally realized at age 45. That I could, put my finger on that pretty well, because there was a Jewish woman who happened to be less than a year younger than I was. So essentially the same age, also 45. It was springtime, and this was another folk dancer. We were going to folk dance events and, movies and, theater presentation at Stanford, the law students had put on, a lot of crazy stuff, doing a lot of silly, almost teenage type things in the springtime. I said, these are the conditions that you want to have in your prom date. It's just a natural outgrowth of this goofy springtime stuff that you're doing. And so I told her, well, can we pretend that we're going to be prom dates? Because these are the conditions that I always thought was, kind of a prerequisite for doing that comfortably. And she not only said, well, yes, certainly we can pretend. And by the way, I didn't go to my prom either back in New Jersey. I mean, she was, was and was at the time at age 45 rather pretty. And I can believe that she had prospects back then, but she and her parents were Jewish and had immigrated to the United States when she was a small baby. So she'd grown up in New Jersey. But I was to find out that, well, the Jewish people on the East Coast that had immigrated from Europe, they've always been puzzled by this strange American custom, the high school prom. And they didn't invent it, and they're not quite sure what to think of it until they're quite acculturated to the United States. And if you don't believe me, I read this a few years ago. Larry David, of Saturday Night Live and, Seinfeld and Curb Your Enthusiasm, Hollywood guy. He spoke of, growing up in Brooklyn and was almost unaware of his high school prom and when it was going to be, didn't go to it. And yet he went to college at the University of Maryland and was elected president of his fraternity. Quite a nice Jewish fraternity called Tau Epsilon Pi. And I have some affection for that very fraternity because they had a chapter at MIT. And I really like those guys. I thought, well, if there's any fraternity I'd want to be in, I've always seemed to be chatting up somebody from Tau Epsilon Pi, and they even thought at the time, this was the late 60s, that we should have some non-Jewish guys in here. They even had some women who were like sweethearts of some of the members who lived there for, I guess it was the spring semester in 1970 when everything was crazy. Nonetheless, Larry, it's not that he didn't get along socially all that badly by the time he was a college student, but just couldn't relate to the high school prom much in the same way that I did. So I had no idea I had this in common with some of our brethren out there, but I was to go to college with some people that were more like me than some of my high school classmates. All due respect to the classmates. Those very same classmates sent me off to find out what the rest of the world was like, right? That would be my poker playing friends.
Yeah, I think universities like that. You find people that think like you.
Well, that's what you should do when you move on to a new school, a new employer, whatever. The next stage ought to be this, and like-minded people make it a lot easier.
So what was it from the lessons that put you off the prom?
From the religion lessons? Well, the religion lessons were about marriage and the family and your duties as, wife or husband, spouse and all that. The prom seemed to be, one of those mating rituals instituted in whatever society you happen to be in as a teenager. And at least we had the option to not participate.
I think that's an astute judgment.
Well,
a mating ritual.
Considering that the young males are expected to take some sort of initiative in this respect, if I disagreed with the idea of taking initiative, there wasn't much they could do about it. Now, Mindy, on the other hand, like I say, she had offers, but assigned herself, so much preparation if she were to say yes to an offer that she had to say, well, I just can't do this. It seems like too much. And I did have that understanding. It's a lot harder for the girl to get ready for all this than for the boy.
It's nice that you met Mindy and someone who had a kind of similar experience to you later on, and be able to share that time later on. That's lovely.
Yeah, well, that's the kind of closure that I needed, but I'm glad I waited till I was 45 for it because it felt right. And
it
would have been tainted if I had, succumbed to the, moderate amount of pressure that I felt at the time. The fact that people thought it was weird, just, that attracted me. I said, there's got to be an upside to being this weird.
Yeah, You got to live your own life, do your own thing.
Right. And, when you take that attitude, they realize that, well, yeah, this is one of those cases where we need your cooperation. So you're sending a message when you do that, maybe you've been forced into a few too many things just to please your parents.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I've got a good example. It's a little different. There's a woman who's married to one of my cousins who was once, I mean, she's, about the same age that my cousin and I are. In fact, my cousin and I are the same age, and I think she's within a year or two of us, but she's a former Miss Wisconsin.
Wow.
Wow. Wow, indeed. But I was to find, I mean, I didn't know that immediately when I met her after she was married to Mike, but I made reference to that once in a while and cheerfully. And, she wanted to make it clear that, well, that was kind of one of those things I did to please my parents. And she didn't really want me to reference it even in a cheerful, joking manner later on. Like, I've never heard that from a former Miss Wisconsin before. Those things weren't all that funny after a while. She didn't want to be reminded of that. And I picked up on it that, well, sometimes you do things to please your parents, and no, it doesn't kill you, but it can come close.
Yeah.
So it's, there's just so many of those things you can do to please your parents before it's too much. And I guess she had a little trouble extracting herself from the beauty contest mentality and what it cost her, if anything. But
well,
so I didn't, I don't make reference to that because it's a mixed bag for her,
Yeah. Well, it sounds like such an achievement, but if it's not what you wanted to do, then it's not what you wanted to do.
Yeah, and you kind of wonder, well, what price did she pay in terms of not being able to do other things in the interest of, taking this as far as it goes? And okay, it went as far as Miss America, and no, she didn't make Miss America, and could have predicted that probably because of the way she was feeling about it. But, we're inclined to say, well, that sounds like it wouldn't kill you to please your parents in that respect when the recognition is something you can refer to for the rest of your life. And yet she doesn't even want to refer to it much.
No. Well, also children sort of automatically want to sort of please their parents or their primary caregivers when they're young. It's only when they're sort of older, sometimes they look back and think, no, that's not me. But it's sometimes
right. And then you start wondering, what price did I pay for being so agreeable? I had other ideas, but I thought they weren't good enough because I wasn't being pushed that way.
Yeah.
Those are the kind of thoughts that come up.
True.
Well, we're running out of time here on this session. Do you want to log in once more?
Yeah, I'm happy. That's cool.
Okay, I'll stop the recording.